They canceled my wedding 5 days before I was supposed to walk down that aisle. His mother smiled while she handed back my ring, and he couldn't even look me in my eyes. They thought they could just throw me away and move on. But what they didn't know, I owned everything. The business he ran, mine. His mother's restaurant, mine. The lake house, the car, even the money he used to buy his new fiancée a ring, all mine. And 3 days later, I showed up to their wedding. At MY venue, in MY wedding dress. And I made sure everyone in that room knew exactly who owned what. Before I tell you how I made them regret the day they tried to erase me, let me ask you this. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought you were nothing without them? Drop a comment right now with the word receipts if you believe in standing up for yourself. Because by the end of this story, you're going to understand why you should never mess with a woman who knows her worth. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare began. Welcome to Reality Stories Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. You know that moment when you think everything in your life is finally coming together? When all the hard work, all the late nights, all the sacrifices finally start to make sense. That's exactly where I was standing just 5 days before everything fell apart. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that I was 34 years old, living in downtown Chicago, and I had just made executive director at one of the largest nonprofit organizations in the Midwest. We handled millions of dollars in grants, helped thousands of families, and I had worked my way up from intern to the top in just 8 years. I was proud of myself, really proud, and I was about to marry the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. His name was David. We'd been together for 5 years. 5 whole years of building what I believed was something real, something solid, something that would last forever. The wedding was planned perfectly. We had booked this beautiful garden venue just outside the city. You know, the kind with the old brick walls covered in ivy and string lights hanging everywhere. It looked like something out of a movie. We had invited 150 people. My dress was hanging in my bedroom closet, wrapped in white tissue paper, waiting for Sunday afternoon. I remember feeling so happy, so complete, like all the pieces of my life had finally clicked into place. I had the career, I had the man, I had the future all mapped out in my head. We were going to buy a house in the suburbs, maybe have a couple of kids, grow old together watching sunsets on our back porch. But life has a way of showing you that the things you think are solid can crumble in a single moment. It was Tuesday evening. I remember the exact day because I was sitting at my dining room table going through the final guest list. I was making sure David's family and my family weren't seated too close together because there was some old drama from years ago that nobody wanted to deal with during the reception. That's when someone knocked on my door. 3 hard knocks that somehow felt wrong even before I got up to answer. I looked through the peephole, and my heart dropped into my stomach. It was David and his mother, Patricia. They weren't supposed to be there. We didn't have any plans that night. And the look on Patricia's face, even through that tiny peephole, told me something terrible was about to happen. I opened the door anyway. Because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You open the door even when every instinct in your body is screaming at you to keep it closed. Patricia walked in first. She was wearing this navy blue dress, the one she always wore to important family events. The one that said she meant business. David followed behind her, and he wouldn't look at me. Not even a glance. His eyes were fixed on my carpet like it was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. That's when I knew. When someone can't look you in the eye, they're about to break your heart. Patricia sat down on my couch without being invited. She folded her hands in her lap real proper-like and took a deep breath. "Sweetheart," she said, and I hated that word coming from her mouth because she only called me sweetheart when she was about to say something cruel. "We need to talk about Sunday." I stood there in the middle of my own living room, the apartment I paid for with my own money, and I felt my whole world starting to shake. "The wedding needs to be postponed," she continued. "David has realized he's not ready for this kind of commitment. You two are just too different. Different backgrounds, different values, different everything. It's better to stop this now before anyone gets hurt worse than they already are." Before anyone gets hurt worse. Like I wasn't standing right there already feeling like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped beating. I looked at David, waiting for him to say something. Waiting for him to tell his mother she was wrong, that we were going to work it out, that 5 years meant something to him. But he just reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out my engagement ring. The diamond ring I'd worn every single day for the past 2 years. He placed it on my coffee table without saying a word. Patricia actually smiled then. I'll never forget that smile. It wasn't kind or sympathetic. It was satisfied. Like she'd won some competition I didn't even know I was part of. I know this is difficult, she said, standing up and smoothing her dress. But you'll understand someday. This is for the best. For everyone. And then they left. Just walked out of my apartment and out of my life like 5 years meant absolutely nothing. Like all the holidays we'd spent together, all the vacations we'd taken, all the plans we'd made were just words written in sand that the tide could wash away. I stood there staring at that ring on my table. And you know what I felt? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't fall apart. I felt anger. Pure, cold, calculating anger. Because Patricia and David had made one very big mistake. They thought I was just some woman they could throw away. They thought I was helpless. They thought I had nothing. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have possibly known, was that I owned everything. And I was about to show them exactly what that meant. Let me take you back about 8 months before that horrible Tuesday. Back to when I thought I was building our future together. David had this dream. He wanted to open a chain of fitness studios across Chicago. Not just regular gyms, but these boutique places with specialized classes, personal training, healthy cafes attached to them. He talked about it constantly. It was his passion, his big vision, the thing that made his eyes light up. He'd invested everything he had into getting the first location up and running. Signed a lease on a building in Lincoln Park, bought all the equipment, hired trainers, spent money on marketing. He was so excited, so full of hope. But about 8 months before our wedding, I started noticing things. David was stressed all the time. He stopped sleeping well. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, and I'd find him sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop, staring at spreadsheets with this look of pure panic on his face. The bills were piling up. Membership wasn't growing fast enough. The equipment financing was killing him. The rent was too high. His investors were getting nervous and pulling out. The whole thing was collapsing, and David was too proud to tell me the truth. Too proud to ask for help. But I could see it. I could see him drowning. So I did what I do best. I handled it. Quietly, carefully, and completely legally. See, my job at the nonprofit meant I understood money. I understood contracts and agreements and how to structure deals. I knew people, lawyers and accountants and business consultants. And I had saved a lot of money over the years. Money I'd planned to use for our life together. I created an investment company. Nothing fancy, just a simple LLC that could purchase struggling businesses. And then I bought David's fitness studio. The whole thing. Every piece of equipment, every contract, the lease, everything. To David, it looked like some corporate investment group had swooped in and saved him. He thought he'd gotten lucky, that some anonymous business people believed in his vision. He had no idea that every single document had my name on it as the owner. I let him keep running the studio. Let him think he was still in charge. Because I loved him, and I wanted him to have his dream. I just made sure that legally, properly, everything was protected. I thought I was protecting us. Protecting our future together. But that wasn't all. Patricia owned this little Italian restaurant on the north side. It had been in her family for 25 years. She was so proud of that place, always talking about the family legacy, about tradition, about how important it was to keep things in the family. She'd make little comments about how I wouldn't understand because I didn't come from that kind of background. What Patricia didn't know was that her restaurant was failing too. The neighborhood had changed, younger places were opening up, and people weren't coming in like they used to. The bank was about to foreclose. She was 3 months behind on her mortgage payments. I found out because David mentioned it one night. He was worried about his mom, said she was stressed but wouldn't accept help from anyone. Said she'd rather lose everything than admit she was struggling. So I handled that too. I bought the mortgage from the bank. My investment company became the new lender. Patricia thought some big corporation had refinanced her loan at a better rate. She had no idea that every single month when she made that payment, she was paying me. I did it because I thought we were family. I thought I was helping the people I'd be connected to for the rest of my life. The lake house where we spent weekends? I'd bought that too when the previous owner needed to sell quickly. Put it in my name, let David think we were just renting. The car he drove to work every day? Leased under my company. Even the savings account he was so proud of having? Joint account with me as the primary holder. I had woven myself into every part of his financial life. Not to control him. Not to trap him. But because I loved him. Because I thought we were building something together. Because when you love someone, you protect them. You catch them when they fall. That night after they left my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to make sense of it. David wasn't cruel. Weak sometimes, yes. Too attached to his mother's opinions, absolutely. But to just walk away like that? Something didn't add up. So I did what any woman with questions does in the modern world. I started looking through social media. It took me about 2 hours to find her. Her name was Stephanie. 28 years old, blonde hair, big smile in every photo. She worked as a marketing consultant downtown. And she was friends with Patricia's best friend's niece. The photos went back for months. For entire months of David living a double life. Dinner dates at restaurants I'd recommended to him. Weekend trips he'd told me were for business conferences. Late-night concerts he'd said were networking events. All of it was with her. But here's what made my blood absolutely boil. In one of Stephanie's Instagram posts from 2 weeks ago, she was wearing a ring. Not my ring, a different one. David had bought her an engagement ring. With what money? My money. Money from the business I owned. He was courting another woman with funds that belonged to me. I sat there in my dark apartment at 2 a.m, and I felt something shift inside me. The sadness turned into something else. Something sharper. Something stronger. They thought they could just erase me. But they forgot who they were dealing with. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My mind was racing, putting pieces together, seeing the whole picture clearly for the first time. The next morning, I called my best friend Rachel. We'd known each other since college. She's a real estate attorney, one of the best in Chicago, and more importantly, she's the kind of friend who will tell you the truth even when it hurts. I told her everything. About the canceled wedding, about Stephanie, about all the investments I'd made. I expected her to tell me I was crazy, that I'd gone too far, that I'd been too controlling. Instead, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Girl, you already own him. The question isn't what happened. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" We met for coffee that afternoon at this little place near her office. I brought every document, every contract, every piece of paper with my signature on it. Rachel went through everything with her lawyer eyes, checking every detail. "It's all legal," she finally said. "Every single thing you did was completely above board. You didn't trick anyone. You didn't forge anything. You invested in businesses that were failing, and you properly documented everything. This is all yours." But then she looked up at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. "There's something you should know," she said. "Word travels fast in certain circles, and I've been hearing things." My stomach dropped. "What kind of things?" "Patricia isn't just canceling your wedding," Rachel said slowly. "She's replacing it." I didn't understand at first. Replacing it? What did that even mean? Rachel pulled out her phone and showed me some text messages from a mutual friend who worked at the garden venue. "They're trying to keep your date. Same venue, same Sunday, same time slot. Patricia's been calling all your vendors, trying to use the arrangements you already made. The flowers you chose, the caterer you booked, even the photographer." The room started spinning. "For David and Stephanie?" Rachel nodded. "They're trying to have their wedding at your wedding. Like you never existed. Like they can just swap you out and everything continues as planned." I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, I felt like I was drowning. It wasn't enough to break my heart. They wanted to take my actual wedding and give it to someone else. But then Rachel put her hand on mine. "Except they made one major mistake," she said. "Whose name is on the venue contract?" I looked up at her. "Mine." "And who made the deposit?" "I did." "And who has the signed agreement with the venue coordinator?" "Me." Understanding started to dawn. "They can't have a wedding there without my permission." Rachel smiled. "Exactly. The venue coordinator already called me this morning, confused because someone else was trying to claim your date. I told her to sit tight and wait for your instructions." We spent the rest of that day planning. Rachel went through every single document again, making absolutely sure everything was airtight. The fitness studio, the restaurant, the lake house, the car, everything. All of it legally, properly mine. "What do you want to do?" Rachel finally asked me. "You could just walk away. Cancel everything, take your losses, start fresh somewhere else." I thought about that. I really did. Part of me wanted to just disappear, move to a different city, forget any of this ever happened. But then I thought about Patricia's smile when she handed back my ring. I thought about David not even having the courage to look me in the eye. I thought about Stephanie wearing a ring bought with my money. I thought about them trying to have my wedding without me. And I realized something. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to let them write the ending to my story. I want to show up, I said. Sunday. At the venue. I want to be there. Rachel raised her eyebrows. Are you sure? It's going to be messy. I'm sure, I said. They want to have a wedding at my venue? Fine. But they're going to learn a very important lesson about who actually owns what. The next few days were a blur. Rachel and I prepared everything. Every document organized, every contract ready, every piece of evidence in order. We contacted the venue coordinator and explained the situation. We made sure my name was the only authorized person for that date. Friday afternoon, I did something that probably sounds crazy. I went to the salon and got my hair done. I got my nails done too, a soft pink color that matched my wedding dress. Then I went to the boutique where I'd bought my dress and picked it up from storage. If they wanted a wedding on Sunday, I was going to give them one. Just not the one they were expecting. Saturday night, I barely slept again. But this time it wasn't from sadness or anger. It was anticipation. That feeling you get before something big is about to happen, when your whole body is humming with nervous energy. I thought about calling it off. About just letting them have their day and moving on with my life. Maybe that would have been the mature thing to do. The bigger person thing to do. But you know what? Sometimes being the bigger person means standing up for yourself. Sometimes it means not letting people walk all over you. Sometimes it means showing up and demanding the respect you deserve. Sunday morning, I woke up early. The sun was just starting to come up, painting my bedroom in soft gold light. I made myself breakfast, even though I could barely eat. I took a long shower. And then very slowly, very carefully, I put on my wedding dress. It was beautiful. White silk with lace details, fitted at the top and flowing at the bottom. It cost more than Patricia's monthly mortgage payment, and looking at myself in the mirror, I knew I looked good. I wasn't going to that venue as a victim. I was going as a woman who knew exactly what she was worth. The garden venue looked absolutely perfect when I arrived. White roses everywhere, exactly the ones I'd chosen. The chairs were set up in neat rows facing an arch covered in ivy and flowers. The string lights I'd requested were already hung even though it was daytime, ready to glow when the sun went down. It was my wedding. Every detail. Every choice. All of it mine. Cars were pulling into the parking area, guests arriving and looking confused. I could see people checking their phones, probably looking at invitations, trying to figure out what was going on. See, there were 2 different sets of invitations circulating. Mine, the original ones I'd sent out months ago. And Patricia's, whatever she'd sent to her people. I parked my car and sat there for a moment, watching people mill around near the entrance. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From knowing that in a few minutes, everything was going to change. Rachel pulled up next to me. She'd agreed to come as my witness, as my lawyer, and as my friend. She looked at me and said, "Last chance to back out. Are you absolutely sure about this?" I looked at that venue, at my flowers, at my chairs, at the life I'd planned that was about to belong to someone else. "I'm sure," I said. We walked in through the main entrance together. The coordinator saw me first and her eyes went wide, but she nodded. She knew what was happening. The guests who knew me started whispering. I could hear my name rippling through the crowd. And then I saw them. Patricia was near the front, directing people to their seats like she owned the place. She was wearing a dark purple dress, her hair done up fancy, playing mother of the groom. When she saw me, her face went from confident to terrified in about 3 seconds. David was standing up at the arch with Stephanie. He was wearing a tuxedo, looking handsome like he always did. Stephanie was in a wedding dress, not as nice as mine but pretty enough. They were talking to the officiant, probably going over last-minute details. David saw me and his face went completely white. His mouth fell open. Stephanie looked at me, then at David, then back at me, clearly trying to understand what was happening. I walked down that aisle slowly, letting everyone get a good long look. The whole venue went silent except for the sound of my heels clicking on the stone pathway. When I reached the front, I didn't yell, didn't scream, didn't make a scene. I just smiled at Patricia and said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "Did you really think you could have a wedding at my venue without me knowing?" Patricia tried to laugh it off, but her voice was shaky. "This is a public venue. Anyone can book it. We have just as much right to be here as anyone else." "Actually," I said calmly, "only people with a valid contract can book it. And the only contract on file for today has my name on it. My signature. My deposit. My money. So technically, Patricia, you're trespassing. All of you are. David finally found his voice. Come on, this is crazy. Can we just talk about this somewhere private? You're making a scene. I turned to look at him. Really look at him. Crazy. I said. What's crazy is you trying to marry another woman at the wedding I planned. What's crazy is you using my money to buy her a ring. What's really crazy, David, is that you have no idea what you actually own anymore. Or should I say, what you don't own. Stephanie stepped back from the arch. Her voice was small and confused. What is she talking about? I opened my purse and pulled out a folder. Rachel had prepared everything, organized it perfectly. I started reading out loud, nice and clear so everyone could hear. The fitness studio on Lincoln Park Avenue, the one David runs so proudly. I own it. I'm not an investor. I'm the sole owner. David works for me. I pulled out the business documents and held them up. It's all here. Legal and proper. David's face went from white to red. That's not possible. I got funding from an investment group. You got funding from me, I said. I am the investment group. I saved your business when it was failing. When you were about to lose everything, I caught you. And I made sure everything was documented properly. I turned to Patricia. And that Italian restaurant you're so proud of? The one that's been in your family for 25 years? I own the mortgage on it. You've been paying me every single month for the past 8 months. Every payment that goes to what you think is some big corporation? That's my company. That money goes into my account. Patricia actually stumbled backward and had to grab a chair. You're lying. That's impossible. Am I? I handed her the mortgage papers. Watched her hands shake as she read her own restaurant's deed with my name at the very top. The guests were completely silent now. Some people had their phones out, recording. I could see David's friends and family members looking at each other in shock. David grabbed the business documents from my hand. He was flipping through them frantically, reading the ownership papers, seeing his signature on agreements he'd signed without really reading carefully. This can't be real, he kept saying. This is my company. I built this. No, baby, I said, and I let that word carry all the hurt he'd caused me. It's my company. It was failing. You were drowning. I saved it. I saved you. And I made sure that legally, properly, everything was protected. I just didn't realize I was protecting myself from you. Stephanie had tears running down her face now, ruining her makeup. You told me you were successful, she said to David. You told me you owned a business. He does work at a business, I said to her, not unkindly because none of this was really her fault. He just doesn't own it. Patricia tried to walk toward me, but her legs were shaking so badly she could barely stand. You can't do this, she said, her voice breaking. That restaurant is my family's legacy. We've had it for 25 years. You can't just take it. I looked at her, this woman who had smiled while handing back my engagement ring. This woman who had tried to erase me like I never existed. I'm not taking anything, Patricia, I said calmly. I'm simply showing you what's already mine. You wanted to cancel me? Replace me? Act like 5 years of my life with your son meant nothing? Well, you can't cancel someone who holds all the cards. I pulled out another set of papers from my folder. Here's what's going to happen. You can keep your restaurant. David can keep working at the fitness studio. But things are going to change. David's voice was small, defeated. What do you want from us? I want you to understand what you threw away, I said. I want you to know that the woman you thought wasn't good enough, the woman your mother looked down on, is the only reason either of you still has anything. And most importantly, I want you to learn some basic human respect. I laid out the terms right there in front of everyone. Rachel stood next to me, confirming every detail. Patricia could keep running the restaurant, but she'd pay me market rate rent from now on. No more family discount, no more special treatment. Just a straight business arrangement. If she missed payments, I'd foreclose. Simple as that. David could keep his position at the fitness studio, but he'd start over from the bottom. No more director title. No more making decisions without approval. He'd be an employee like everyone else, and every paycheck would have deductions until the personal loans I'd given him were repaid in full. At the current rate, that would take him about 7 years. The lake house? Mine completely. The car? Being returned immediately. The joint savings account? Being split down the middle with proper documentation. You're going to ruin us, Patricia said, tears running down her face now. No, I said firmly. I'm giving you a chance to earn back what you almost lost. If I wanted to ruin you, I'd foreclose on everything today. Right now. And you'd walk away with nothing. Instead, I'm giving you an opportunity to work for what you have. To understand that success isn't something you're entitled to. It's something you earn. I looked at David. Why did you do this? Why didn't you just talk to me? If you weren't ready to get married, if you'd fallen for someone else, why couldn't you just be honest? For the first time that day, he looked me in the eye. Because I was scared, he said quietly. Scared you were too good for me. Scared I'd never be successful enough, smart enough, enough of anything. Mom kept saying we were from different worlds, that you'd eventually realize you could do better. And then Stephanie showed up and she made me feel like I was enough exactly as I was. So instead of talking to me about it, you just replaced me? I'm sorry, he said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. I was a coward. I am a coward. Stephanie had taken off her veil and was crying into her hands. I didn't know, she kept saying. I didn't know any of this. He told me you two had broken up months ago. He said it was over. I looked at her, this young woman who'd been lied to just like I had. I believe you, I said. But you should know, the ring he gave you? Bought with my money. The romantic dinners? My money. The weekend trips? All of it was mine. He didn't build anything for you. He was spending what I gave him. She took off the ring and handed it to David, then walked away from the arch. Some of her family members followed her out. I heard a car start and drive away. Rachel stepped forward with the papers. If you agree to these terms, sign here. If you don't, we go to court and you'll lose everything anyway, but with lawyer fees on top of it. Patricia signed first, her hand shaking so badly she could barely write. Then David. His signature looked different than usual, smaller somehow. Defeated. When it was done, I picked up the bouquet that was sitting on a chair near the arch. The white roses that were supposed to be for Stephanie's wedding. My flowers, really. You know what the saddest part is? I said, looking at David one last time. If you had just been honest with me, I would have helped you anyway. If you'd told me you were scared or unsure or falling for someone else, we could have talked about it like adults. We could have ended things with respect and dignity. But you chose to let your mother make your decisions. You chose to sneak around. You chose to try and replace me like I was something you could just throw away and upgrade. I started walking back down the aisle. At the entrance, I turned around. So now you get to live with those choices. Every month when you make those payments, remember this day. Remember that you could have had a partner who loved you enough to catch you when you fell. Instead, you have an employer who owns everything you thought was yours. I left them standing there in that beautiful garden venue, still in my wedding dress, and drove to Rachel's house. We spent the rest of that Sunday eating the wedding cake I'd ordered, drinking champagne, and laughing about how the universe has a funny way of balancing things out. That was 6 months ago. I'm doing better now. Better than I ever was, actually. I met someone new a few months back. His name is James, and he's a teacher at an inner-city high school. He doesn't have much money, doesn't own a business, doesn't care about impressing anyone. But he's honest. He's kind. And he sees my worth without needing to lose everything to understand it. David still shows up to work at the fitness studio every day. Does his job, keeps his head down, goes home. I rarely see him, but when I do, he can barely look at me. Patricia runs the restaurant and pays her rent on time. Never a day late. Funny how responsibility works when consequences are real. I drive past that lake house sometimes. The one that's fully mine now. I'm thinking about selling it, or maybe I'll keep it as a vacation rental. Haven't decided yet. But every time I see it, I remember that Sunday. The day I showed up to a wedding that wasn't supposed to be mine and reminded everyone in that room that you can't cancel someone who owns the whole show. People ask me all the time if I went too far, if I was too harsh, if I should have just let it go and moved on. But here's the thing. I didn't take anything that wasn't already legally mine. I didn't scheme or plot revenge. I protected myself and my investments properly and legally. And when they tried to throw me away, I simply showed them the receipts. Some people call it petty. I call it self-respect. Because at the end of the day, I loved someone enough to save them when they were drowning. I invested in their dreams, supported their family, and built a future for us. And instead of appreciating that, they tried to erase me. So I reminded them that you can't erase someone who owns everything. If there's one lesson I've learned from all of this, it's this: always protect yourself. Love with your whole heart, yes. Support your partner, absolutely. But never, ever put yourself in a position where someone can throw you away like you never mattered. Know your worth. Document everything. And never let anyone else write the ending to your story. Because the woman who knows what she's worth will always come out on top. And the people who underestimated her will spend years paying for that mistake. Literally. I hope this story taught you something. Maybe it's about protecting yourself legally. Maybe it's about choosing better people. Maybe it's just about knowing that when life knocks you down, you have the power to get back up and show everyone exactly who they messed with. Whatever lesson you take from this, remember one thing. You are never as powerless as someone wants you to believe you are. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply standing in your truth and letting the consequences play out exactly as they should. Thank you for listening to my story. I don't tell it for sympathy. I tell it because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that they're stronger than they think. That being smart is better than being bitter. And that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Know your worth. Protect your assets. And never, ever let anyone write your ending. The end.